Welcome everyone to MailFuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 3. It is called A Man Alone. So, full spoilers for the episode. Premise of... Wait, are you actually drinking something with like an umbrella or something in it? What was that?
It's a mojito. It's mint leaves. You kind of have
okay.
to. They don't really work without them.
But one of these days you're going to bring up like a glass with little umbrellas and like sparklers and whatever.
No, see, I'll go as far as like herb and fruit garnishes, like like a slice of orange or like orange peel, lemon twist, those things that have a sensory purpose. But the ones that are just purely decorative, like the umbrellas, I'm good.
Yes, well, sorry to derail the intro to the episode there, but Connor distracted me. Yes, the premise of this episode is that there is a criminal on board that Odo's dealt with before, and is not very happy with his presence there, and he very quickly is murdered. And Odo ends up looking like the prime suspect because no one could really get into his well, it's not his quarters, it's like a small holodeck room, and very quickly it's like, well, a shapeshifter could, and Odo, to his credit, actually brings it up himself, like he technically could have committed this murder, but yeah, so it goes into that, it goes into sort of the reaction on the station. There's a bit of mob justice sort of going on, and we get into that kind of thing. We get to spend a bit more time with Bashir. Quark's back in this episode, get a little bit of him, some intriguing little tidbits, and of course the subplot is Keiko basically finding a new thing to do because her old job on the Enterprise doesn't exist and she's not very happy on Deep Space Nine. She needs a purpose, and it turns out that you don't need like a teacher's qualification to be a teacher all of a sudden. That felt a bit weird to me, but we'll get into it. How did you feel about A Man Alone?
I like it a lot, but I'm a big fan of locked room murder mysteries anyway. They're like my favorite kind of murder mystery. So yeah, I'm kind of a sucker for those.
Yeah, I had a decent time with it. I would probably say it's the weakest of the episodes we've done so far.
I preferred this over the last one.
Fair enough, but I think I like some of the character tidbits that it does give Odo and it does give Quark and the rest of them, but I would say that some of the mob justice stuff feels like it sort of turns up almost out of nowhere, where it just kind of... you get kind of like a mid guest star kind of shouting lines of dialogue, and it comes off a little bit hokey.
It feels a little bit low budget, like we couldn't hire enough extras, or we didn't have a set big enough to hold all the extras, sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's because it's sort of it's poking at the idea that they already dislike him because he's different, right? And they're trying to sort of play that angle a little bit, and I appreciate that, but I don't know if they actually did enough with it to really make it feel like it was really doing much with it.
I think that's the sort of thing where if this was in another, 3-4 episodes time, where we'd kind of seen some of that in the background already, and that kind of been a bit more established, that would probably be more effective.
Yeah, I made it work better. But I do like some of the stuff that it does with this, because Odo kind of has a bit of a... He's a bit of an arc. He doesn't necessarily have a moment where he kind of like admits that he was wrong per se, but it's very intentional that early on when he's yelling, he wants this guy off the station, Ubadan, he wants him off the station, and Sisko's like, look, I get it, he technically murdered someone in the past, but the government's let him go, and under the new rules, so we can't really do anything until he does something. And he's like, this is not about the laws change all the time, this is about justice. And later on, when the mob's coming after him, they scream that they want justice, and there's kind of like a little bit of like, oh, maybe Odo can learn that he was going up, even though it turns out that Ibadan was up to no good. Don't get me wrong, he is a bad guy, and it's particularly targeting Odo by framing him for a murder that didn't technically it did take place, but there's a clone, right? There's a whole lot to get into.
It's not as it seems, yeah.
Yeah, there's more to it, but there's so it's all a very evil concocted plan.
And then a Scooby-Doo-esque disguise.
Yes. Well, that was funny because every time when something goes down, we see this. Well, it's not every time, but there's a couple of times when the crowd are starting to ramp up. I thought they were going to do something like, oh, this this Bajoran, this old man Bajoran with the hood up, is he like a telepath or something? And he's like riling everyone up, because he was always kind of there watching, just when everyone was getting riled up. Turns out he wasn't doing that. But yeah, later on, like, Odo waits for him, pretending to be a chair, and unmasks him, and it's actually a disguise. It's like, it's like a Mission Impossible style face mask, and lo and behold, it's just the man who's meant to be murdered the whole time.
I also hope they keep getting really inventive with what Odo transforms into.
They got 7 seasons of it, so I mean, I feel like we're going to see a few variations.
I hope they don't burn through it too fast, because we had the money bag and now the chair.
Bit of rat as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, they got options. Which that's not an important detail for his character here. So every day he has to be in his natural form to recharge, basically when he sleeps, effectively, right? I assume that's what it's like. And he says that he was literally in a bucket.
Maybe the puddle that killed Tasha was something similar to Odo.
Oh, it was Odo's race. Yeah, it was one of his kind. Yeah. Evil Odo. I just, the way, because it's just when Kira says, "Do you have an alibi for the time?" She's like, "Well, I had to recharge. I was in a bucket." I love the idea. I want a scene now where someone walks in on him when he's sleeping, quote unquote, and just see a bucket of water. And they're like, "Oh,
it'll just be like a bucket of grey paint or something."
Yeah. And what do they do? They like, see, when you wake someone up, you sort of shake them. Like, does someone just like sort of poke the bucket? Like, Odo,
just kick the edge of the bucket.
Odo, we need you, Odo.
Yeah.
So many possibilities for comedy with this going forward, but yeah. I mean, yeah. As soon as Odo sees this guy playing craps or roulette or whatever he's doing. To be fair, I think it was some alien version of one of these things. I don't know if it was necessarily exactly an Earth game, but he immediately gets confrontational with them, demands that he leave. He does look a little bit hot-headed and sort of off-kilter, but ultimately he was right to suspect something, even if he was going about it the wrong way. And as it goes on, I think it's interesting seeing who sticks up for Odo. Most of the main characters don't just instantly think he's guilty, right? They sort of take it seriously and they look into it. But everyone's kind of going by the book and just sort of like, Kira is adamant that he didn't do it. Sisko says he doesn't personally believe that he didn't do it, but he has to kind of take him off duty for the time being. And Odo's
reasonable.
Yeah, but Odo kind of gets confrontational when he says that. He's like, "Oh, yeah, you don't really know. You don't know me, Commander. Like, does that seed a doubt? Because you don't know that I'm not capable of murder." And that's the sort of line that works because we're only on episode 3. Like, that line won't work in season 4 or whatever.
No, that has to be played early.
Yeah. So again, we're establishing the relationships between the characters and sort of setting up like a lot of status quo stuff with them. And I think the most interesting thing that came out of this, because Odo had a couple of good beats last episode as well. I think it was Quark this episode that had a couple of interesting little tidbits.
Kind of sticks up for him.
Yeah, he sticks up for him in 2 scenes. Where he sticks up for him literally, where he said, the other guys are there talking about him being a murderer, and he sort of steps in and goes, "Yeah, look, he's a bastard. Like, I don't like him, right? He's a prick, but he's not a killer, right? He wouldn't do this."
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, okay, all right. So you know what? For all of Quark's qualities and the way that Odo talks about him, like, all the time, he clearly does have this sort of line, and I do wonder if, and I think there's even a line in the scene where someone says, "I thought you two were like, close enemies." He's like, "Well, it's the closest thing he's got to a friend," or something like that. And I do wonder if this like frenemy style relationship is something we're going to, because then later on in the episode we get a scene where Quark comes by and he's actually looked into something for him to sort of help prove or disprove that he killed this guy. And Odo's very standoffish, and he's sort of like making sure Quark doesn't steal anything, and general, because this is just right after Odo's found his quarters be graffitied. But yeah, so that was interesting. This kind of uneasy, like the idea that Odo's having to accept a little bit of help from Quark and how that makes him feel, and the idea that he's going to have to again reevaluate his like view of the world, which is very black and white. He does not like shades of grey. Odo clearly is not a big fan of that idea.
Yeah.
So he's not a fan of compromise. In fact, hell, the episode literally starts with him talking about how he doesn't want to be in a couple because it's all just about compromise. He doesn't like compromises.
Yeah. And it's that old joke of, oh, you want to do this, you want to do that, so you do that.
Yes. So, and honestly, I never thought about it until I just accidentally said it there. But it actually kind of did set up some of his, like, the way he thinks just about justice in the episode. Very sly. I did not pick up on that until I just stumbled into it there. So, fair play on the writing, I suppose. But yeah,
subconsciously planting it as it went on.
Yeah. So points where points are owed. Yeah, the actual mystery, though, as it turns out, just after the mob scene, which Cisco, everyone's basically there at that point, to be honest, but Cisco's the one actually at the front, sort of shooting his phaser and making people stand down. Or right after this, it's Bashir who runs in and says, "Okay, we figured out something," because they found like a DNA sample on like the victim's quarters, and it turns out that it's actually like DNA of a clone, and he figures out that he's grown a clone. He's basically grown another one, and I love that they don't really like, because someone says, "What about this clone that we're growing in this tub here?" And he's like, "Well, in a couple of days he'll be a fully functioning human being." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, but that's kind of a big deal. Like you're going to give him a passport and like send them."
Apparently, not such a big deal in the future. Apparently, they've been over cloning already.
I just, because they can't find this clone guilty of whatever the main guy's done, so they have to give him a chance to just go be someone, right?
And the fact that murdering his own clone still counts as a murder charge, which implies that the clones do have their own independent rights and are their own individual people as recognized under the law.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting. It's pretty huge in itself, right? To just drop this in like that.
Which makes sense given just Star Trek's philosophy about finding new life.
It's not surprising, but I don't remember dealing with it at any point before this.
I don't know if we've done clones before.
No, I don't feel like we have.
Which is funny, because you think it in 6 seasons of Next Gen and 3 seasons of original series that they come
we've
up
had lookalikes, right?
Oh, we've had plenty of lookalikes, yeah.
yeah, but no actual clones that I remember.
No, that's interesting.
Makes sense though, because this is early 90s at this point. So this is
the sheep. Yeah.
Sheep, yeah. That's around that time.
So that thought process coming up.
Yeah, it's in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, so that's just an interesting development, and the episode wraps up pretty quickly from then on, because then Odo just goes and waits in the quarters for him to return, and lo and behold, it's this old man. It turns out to be the bad guy, and that's it. Hunky dory. Yeah, solid enough plot. Gives us a nice insight into Odo again, and just sort of fleshes him out a little bit, much like we got with Kira last episode. We'll find out soon if the next one's going to be for someone else. But some other things going on in the episode. We have the school subplot, which is Keiko's feeling frustrated because she doesn't know what to do with herself. O'Brien's like, "Hey, I can offer you to get a transfer or something, or ask for a transfer." And she's like, "Well, that's not fair, because that would kind of like make you lose your promotion." Because it's not just that he agreed to come to Deep Space Nine because he fancied it over the Enterprise. He did get an upgrade, presumably, for doing so. So they don't really know what the solution is, and he's called away to duty. And then she sees the kids misbehaving. Jake and the Fingari kid.
Yeah, Quark's kid, right? Oh,
that's not Quark.
Nephew. It's his nephew, I think, isn't it?
Maybe his nephew, but yeah, it's not, because that's not Quark's not the one who drops him off at the thing.
No, I think it's like his nephew though, or something like that.
Or even like, because it's the father that Keiko talks to him, and she's trying to convince him to go, send the kid to the school, and that's not Quark. But and she just has this idea. Oh, the kids need a place to go. They're hanging around the promenade. They don't know what to do with themselves. They're getting up to trouble because there's nowhere else to go. And there's sort of like some little lines here or there that implies that they are still being schooled in a sense. She mentions when they're talking about Jake that, he's at a computer like getting lessons that are kind of like pumped in just through Starfleet internet or whatever. But it would be more ideal for them to actually go to a place and socialize and actually have a proper schooling environment.
Which is why when you said, does she not need qualifications to be a teacher? I'm assuming not, because she's not really teaching. I think the computers are still doing all the actual teaching. She's just kind of providing the environment and the supervision.
She's the prison guard, yeah.
Basically, yeah.
No, I did think of that, right? I did think, oh, maybe all the lessons, especially since the different kids have got different kind of like syllabuses because they're different races and things like that. Maybe, yeah, she's just there to kind of like encourage things and help.
She does seem to be curating the syllabus a little bit, though, because when she's talking to the Ferengi, she's like, oh, he'll learn this, this, and this. So I guess she's choosing what lessons they're having to some degree.
I thought the computer thing first, but then the more we saw of it, and then by the end where she's like, hey kids, I'll be your teacher, and then it kind of like fades to like the ending, I was like, it just kind of feels like she's going to be a teacher in the traditional sense. Although I suspect that, yes, a lot of the actual teaching will go through the computer still.
Yeah. She doesn't need to know it. She'll just go, and open your textbooks to page whatever, and the computer will just flip. But there you go.
Even then, though, teachers, even once they've learned the thing they're going to be teaching, tend to do a teaching course to learn how to do that part as well.
Usually, yes.
Keiko's just like, I'm on TV, I don't need that.
Yeah,
I'm just going to do it. And Sisko's like, that's the thing she says, Sisko, yeah, I've never taught before, but I've always thought I could be good at it. And Sisko's like, that's a great idea.
Like, yeah, just go for it. Why not?
I mean,
he's there going, yeah, just go away. Just go do your thing.
Yeah. And I appreciate that the idea of the school existing is a good idea and that Sisko would be up for that. And it probably does seem like a really smart thing to do. If they're going to have like kids living there and they're going to be here for the long term, it does make sense. But yeah, still, so maybe a few little logic holes in how quickly this just comes together. But I suspect then, this is something we can cut to once in a while when we see Keiko. She's teaching the kids. Yeah. Although it'll be an interesting class because it'll be like, it's just going to be one class for all the different age ranges of kids because it's only about, what did you say, 16 kids, something like that, she said?
For now.
On the station. Oh, for now, true, yeah. Maybe she'll have to take on some staff, like we'll have 2 classes.
She'll be like the head teacher.
It'll be like the 6 to 11-year-olds in one class and the 12 to 18-year-olds in the second class.
Yeah.
So, no, this was fine. I mean, it was,
Yeah, it was a perfectly decent subplot.
Again, setting up stuff on the station. O'Brien and Keiko sort of interacting again. It's just nice to see. We've not seen it in a while, so.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then, another couple of little things. The episode started with Bashir trying his luck with Dax again, when she's playing the game in the hollow room. And he gets a little bit, I don't want to say jealous necessarily, but he does start to get concerned that because she's going off to dinner with Sisko, that there might be something there. But he later, almost inadvertently, ends up on lunch with Sisko because Sisko asked Dax if she wants to go to lunch, and he just kind of goes, because he's got his back turned, so he doesn't really realise that it's not him that's been spoken to, and Bashir just goes, yeah, sure, I'd do lunch. So Sisko, being the friendly captain or commander that he is, decides to
go along with it.
Yeah, just go for it. And then they sit and have a conversation about Dax and how it's a little bit different, it's a little bit weird, that there was an old man when he knew Dax before, but now it's this new person, and kind of talking about, there's going to be some things that they just genuinely can't do anymore because she's now this young woman versus the old man. And they kind of reaffirm some of the ideas with the trill that, it's the same being in the inside, but the host still matters and kind of like has some effect on what the person desires, what the person wants. So the idea that, I mean, there's even kind of a joke that Dax is trying to suppress any kind of like sexual or romantic needs that the host is kind of like wanting, but admitting that they are kind of there, and it's more from the host side to an extent than it is from...
and kind of acknowledging that friendships post transition to a different body don't always work out because they kind of do change who they are to some extent. So who knows how this friendship with Sisko will actually be in the long run.
It's funny, obviously some of this you can sort of, like, it's so obvious to look at it and say, oh, is there some allegories in here for being trans, and like, can some of this be applied to that? And I think parts of it can, but parts of it can't. Like, I don't think every part of it is necessarily meant to say anything about that or has that in mind. It's maybe just more of a an interesting idea for an alien species rather than anything direct. But
yeah, I think obviously the core idea of it is definitely allegorical for that.
yeah, but and some of the things that come up from it are just naturally or inherently going to tie into it, like absolutely. But at the same time, there are differences where there's certainly no like talking about who she used to be is not some faux pas here or anything like that. It's something. It's quite a reasonable subject, and she's comfortable talking about it and things. Whereas that's something that feels very different from the typical trans experience. So
yeah, it's obviously it's possible that this was just okay. This was 30 odd years ago. Maybe their understanding wasn't quite there in the writers' room, or alternatively, I say this is just their way of making it feel more natural in the show. Of just let's not just make it exactly 1-to-1. Let's actually dress it up in a sci-fi setting, and you have the core point still there, but expand it to make it feel like it's not just that it has more going on in its world and feel more organic because of that.
Yeah, and then there's maybe some other sort of things you can bring into it, like Cisco talking about how there's certain things we can't do anymore, sort of reminiscing about certain things and almost being a little sad and admitting that it does feel a bit weird that this is this she's different now, and that time will fix that. But you could almost apply that to anyone when someone goes through any kind of change, and like maybe something you used to do with like a female, in our case because we're guys, but like, so let's say you've got a platonic female friend, but then you get into a relationship with someone. Maybe there's certain things that you would have done with that platonic friend before that you might not do anymore. So, that's just the example I'm thinking of. I don't know if that necessarily applies directly to this, but like just stuff like that where the idea of accepting change, in many ways, so much of the bigger things in the show are about accepting the change of the Bajor's now independent, got this new provisional government, they get the wormhole, all this is going on. So maybe that's the thematic kind of like intention with this character more than anything else.
Yeah, that's very possible.
Yeah.
Definitely looking forward to her having her own episode in the next few, presumably, to kind of delve into that stuff a little bit more. I feel at this point it kind of has to be an episode with Cisco about this stuff with their relationship coming to a head and kind of working out what their future relationship is actually going to be. And it kind of, so at the minute they're both in this, there's some awkwardness, kind of avoiding each other a little bit. Obviously they're being professional, but they're both acknowledging things have changed a bit. And I think that once that's kind of just okay, we have an episode, get that all out in the open, and kind of reestablish what their relationship going forward is going to be for kind of the foreseeable future on the show. I think that's probably going to be needed soon, at least in a B plot.
I think some of the interesting decision is made with the characters. The idea that Bashir already knows that Dax is Trill, and is not even slightly hesitant about it. He's actually very fascinated and just wants to ask questions, and talks about like the old man version that came before, and wants to ask questions of Cisco about it. It's very interesting. I suspect there might be a time in the future where someone else is interested in Dax, and we do get kind of the coming out of being Trill, if that's not even the right term, because I mean obviously she has the markings on the side of her face which kind of indicate Trill, but
to someone who might not know what those mean, kind of having to explain that,
I mean, maybe that's the desire not to do the obvious parallels again, and it's treating it a little bit differently, or maybe it's just to show that hey, this is the future where things, in terms of this kind of thing, there's less discrimination, things are more accepted, and Bashir's just an indication of that.
It could be, but it also makes sense for Bashir to be curious. He's a doctor, right? He asks questions about a lot of things. He's interested in things, so that, especially when Trill are intrinsically tied to like anatomy, right? With how they're bonded and things like that. It makes sense for a doctor to be interested in those sorts of things.
Yeah. So there's a credit that this is basically only 2 scenes that inspired this discussion, but so there's definitely some interesting things going on. There you go, that's A Man Alone. It's a pretty decent episode. I would probably rank it the lowest of the 3 so far, but you swapped this in the last one, so
it's not like head and shoulders or anything like that. I think they're both solid.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there's a big dip between them. It's just kind of, we've only got 3 so far, so it's easy to compare them. It gets harder to do the more we get. But looking across to the next episode, it's called Babel, and here's the description on IMDb. The crew and civilian population of Deep Space Nine begin to speak gibberish when a plague, an aphasia virus, engineered by the Bojarans as a weapon against the Cardassians, accidentally gets released into the station's atmosphere. This sounds interesting. I suspect the actor's having some fun just coming up with gibberish.
Yeah, that does sound fun.
I wonder, like, when we say gibberish, are they still saying words but just saying them in nonsensical orders, or are they just making noises? Like, what's the extent of gibberish here?
Either way could be fun. I'm gonna hope for words, just because that'll be less grating, I think. Yes. Over a whole episode.
That's fair. Yeah.
Either way, though, I think it's going to be a fun showcase for all the actors and their performances. To kind of get across everything they want to communicate with their body language, as opposed to just, there's no dialogue, going to be no meaningful dialogue anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the characters is going to walk into the command deck and say, "Doctor Who's a good show," and then that's when they're going to know that gibberish has been said.
Yeah.
And
yeah, whatever.
So easy, so easy. Well, there you go. That is Deep Space Nine episode. Let us know what you think of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. And of course, you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us over there for as little as $1 per month. Or if you want, you can hit the super thanks button on YouTube. But those do help support all the content and keep everything coming. Thank you very much for joining us once again. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek. And somewhere out there, Odo's distant third cousin, also a puddle, is wanted for the murder of Tasha Yar.